Okay, so the debugger is a way of fixing your program when things go wrong, or at least trying to figure out how to do that. So the way you want to use this is to double click on or single click on a single line of code, and if you click the line number, don't click to the right or to the left because it won't work, but click on the line there. Okay, so this is the line we've discovered there's potentially a problem with, and it is the my variable equals 5 plus 10. So I click there, and that means when you get to this line, stop. So then we click debug project, which is the arrow here next to the run one. So run means don't bother debugging it, I'm not interested if things go wrong. This one means stop when things go wrong, or stop on this line, there's a breakpoint on. So I'll click that, and the project will run, and it will indicate that it's stopped. And this little green arrow appears. This little green arrow indicates this is the line there's a problem with. Now, we need to first of all to see if we can get the contents of this variable, because in the moment it should be 0 or undefined or something, because we haven't put any values in it yet. So the way we do that is we right click it and we click new watch, and we can give it a name. I'll just call it the same as before, which is handy. Now it says my variable is not a known variable in the current context. So we don't quite know why that is, but it's probably because it doesn't have a value. So hopefully, after executing this line, so the green line indicates we're about to run this line, then it'll move on to this line, and it should get the value 15. So I will run that. The step over command will run that command. It sounds like it won't do it, and it sounds like it's going to step over it and skip it, but step over does in fact mean run this command. So we run it, and it moves to the next line. That means I've just done this line, and we're now pointing at the main.send message line. And here we can see 15 is the value. So there is the variable, there is the value. And we can actually change this value if we want, so we can put in like 50, and that will switch it to 50. Now let's try changing that back to 15, because we don't want to mess with that. Now at the moment the main window is saying no messages, and I will run that line. The value, the answer is 15 appears, so we know the message got displayed on the screen just right. And then we'll run it again. This steps off the end of our program, because we were right at the end of the program, and we stepped off the end. So now it is sitting there running, and it is saying the answer is 15. So I have no idea why it didn't display previously. I haven't made any changes, I promise. You can go back and check. That's exactly the same code. So I suspect it's probably to do with the build being outdated. So I wrote this new code, and possibly I didn't save it, or possibly I didn't build it or run it properly, but I guess we'll never know. Or I could watch the video again and probably figure it out. But that's a great way to step through your program and find bugs. So let's see if we can output a more exciting problem. Well, we'll go with 5 over 2. That's divided by. So 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So we should see the value 2.5 coming out here. And 2 comes out. So why does 2 come out? That's a complicated question. Well, let's try and figure it out. Well, 2 is a whole number, and 2.5 isn't a whole number. That's the only difference. Well, let's have a look. Oh, wait, we're using integers. And when we're using integers, that means we've only got a box big enough to fit a whole number. So this calculation, 5 over 2, gives us 2.5, and our instruction tells Java, drop this in this box. And in fact, it'll tell us if we hover over it and put that value in directly. It says possible loss of precision. It means, hey, you're about to put a number with a decimal place in a box that's too small for it, so you're only going to get the front half. That's a big deal, problem. So let's see if we can fix that. 5 over 2, we will change our variable type into being a double. Well, let's run that. The answer is 2.0. And again, this is because this is actually being treated here as an integer, because Java in its infinite wisdom will look at this and it will go 5, that is our integer number, and you wanted me to divide it by another integer. So 5 divided by 2, that is 2 according to integer division. So the way we can fix this is we can say, hey dummy, this is an actual double here, 5.0 divided by 2.0, and that forces Java to acknowledge that this is a double. This, even though it's got a static value here, even though it's 5, it's just got a normal value, it's not a variable or anything, it still has a type. So let's build that and run it. 2.5. So we finally got the right answer. So not only was changing our variable not enough, see, 2.0. So it's gone from 2 to 2.0, which indicates that it is recognized this variable is capable of storing decimal points, but the 5 here is identified as a whole number. It says, hey, this looks like an int, I'll treat it like an int. This looks like an int, I'll treat it like an int. And this actually shows us how Java isn't even capable of replacing it with something like this, because even that task, even the task of doing this division, the value has to be stored somewhere, and it will be stored in some internal variable, and that internal variable is going to be an integer. So it'll put that there as its integer, 2, because 5 over 2 is in an integer is 2. It just drops the fraction because it can't store it, and its internal variable will then replace it here, and then it will copy it into there. So these are the little stumbling blocks for you. Don't worry if you found that complicated or didn't really understand it. Basically, if you're going to use doubles, make sure you put in decimal places, even if the decimal place is 0. Okay, so that's how we can output a value from our variable. Now let's see if we can get something more exciting going. Well, wouldn't it be great if the user could give us a number to calculate? They can. So this is the instruction we can use to do that. We previously saw how the basic structure of an assignment worked. We have the name of the variable, equals, and then the value. Well, we can replace that value, that 50, with a sum. We can also replace it with what we call a method call or a function call. That is when we say, go do this thing. Go get an int from the user and use this text to do it. Okay, so we'll look a bit more into these methods and exactly what they mean in another video. But for now, just accept that this section of code here means go to the keyboard and take out the value and store it here and then move it into the variable. Okay. So let's see if we can get that to work. So let's go back to dealing with ints, and we will have main.getInt from user, and we will have message for the user saying, let's see, what should it be? Give me a number. Now this can be anything you want. It corresponds to what you're going to ask the user for. Because if you're asking the user for a number, then you should at least tell him something about what that number is. So let's run that code. So up comes a dialog box. The text we typed in is what appears, and I will give it a number, and that number appears up in the corner. Okay, so let's see if we can extend that to doubles. .557. Now it's given us 0.0. Why is that? That's because getInt from user isn't compatible with doubles. So we have to use getDouble from user. So let's run that again and give them a double. 4.443. 4.443. Brilliant. So let's go see if we can go the whole hog here and do an exciting calculation in which we add a couple of numbers together. So we will start off with number 1, and then we'll start off by declaring another number called number 2 and another number called number 3. And then we will have another double called the answer. So this is going to give us 4 boxes. We're going to get a number from the user for each of the first 3, and then we're going to set the value of the final one to each of those added together. So let's ask the user for the first number. And then we'll ask them for the second number. And then we'll ask them for the third number. Now, the final calculation is going to be answer equals number 1 plus number 2 plus number 3. Make sure you don't have any spaces in between these, because you can't have a space in the name of a variable. So let's see if we can output our answer. So declare 3 variables, declare an answer variable, get a value from the user for each of these, add them together, storing the result in the answer box, and then display the answer to the user in a send message command. Well, for the first box, we'll put 1.555, and then we'll add 2.555, so we should be on about 4.111 or something. Then we'll add 3 to that, 7.111. Brilliant. That looks about right. So we can do a simple addition, and we can basically start adding some numbers together. So you should go a bit further than this and have a look at adding numbers together, dividing numbers, and asking the user a whole bunch of numbers, and then basically doing some more exciting calculations based off of that. And we can actually add numbers together and then add numbers after that. So we can then say answer equals answer times 2, and then that would add the values together, and then whatever value it was would get multiplied by 2. So let's say the user entered 1, 2, 1. Well, 1, 2, 1 is 4 added together, 1 plus 2 plus 1. Then it would say, okay, answer is now 4 times 2. And this structure is very interesting. It's a way of changing the value that's in its variable. It's changing a value of a variable, answer, but it's changing it by its own contents. So this is something we'll see later on when we look at repeating, because before we learn how to make Pac-Man move 5 squares, we have to teach the computer how to add up, because believe it or not, a computer doesn't know how to add without us telling it how to add. It needs us to tell it the name of a variable to use to keep track of adding. It has to know how to add by 1. It has to know where to store that new value, how to keep a running total, and it has to know when to stop adding. So that's probably a bit too far for this lecture, but we'll find that when we look at repeats.